Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is Josh Rhodes, the host with the most of the Retro Monster Truck Review. Both myself and Matt Stoltz really do appreciate you guys commenting, and subscribing on our videos here on YouTube, as well as following us on Spotify and giving us those 5-star reviews on Apple iTunes. We appreciate it very much. Without further ado, though, we're going to jump right into this week's episode. We're going back in time to day number 2 in Weedsport, New York for the TNT Monster Truck Challenge. We're back again, ladies and gentlemen, one and all. Welcome to the Retro Monster Truck Review. Matt, this week we're going to Weedsport, New York. We're going to cover day number 2 of the TNT Monster Truck Challenge out there. And this is a really cool event from way back in the day. This is part of the New York mini-series. It was a part of a 10-show, 16-day route that these guys used to do. And it was a grueling travel schedule for these guys.
Man, what a stretch of events we've got here through New York. The mini-series, it's legendary for those who are in the TNT Monster Truck Challenge. This is day number 4 in a row that these guys are racing their monster trucks at different places.
Exactly. A series like this, words can't express how difficult this is on equipment. And one of the guys that was really having problems with that equipment was, of course, Dennis Anderson and the Gravedigger. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. But like I said, 10 shows in 16 days is just grueling for these boys. And now we're here at the Cayuga County Fairgrounds. We're only 4 days into this. Dennis is actually showing up late to this one. He missed the first day due to a big accident over in Buffalo. I wouldn't even really call it an accident. I'd call it just massive air that led to a lot of parts coming out from underneath that truck.
An Army already tonight in Buffalo, New York. Major stories are breaking. The first is about Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger. He is out of the competition.
Well, he showed up one time, made one shot, and Richard, the replay comes on the screen. I want you to notice what happened. Completely clear. I have never seen a monster truck go over 12 cars at one time. And Dennis Anderson was glad to get out of that truck. It shook him up. We were standing at the end of the track, and he was hustling to get out. It really worried him.
Well, this is a replay from qualifying, which took place about an hour ago. Dennis Anderson with major damage to that truck, Army.
Yeah, he will not be able to make the call. All the damage was in the drivetrain. The engine held together, the transmission. Boy, everything else just went the way of the buffalo.
Just big-time damage. We're here at the Cayuga County Fairgrounds. That's Native American tribe known as the People of the Great Swamp. I guess, Cayuga's near a body of water there, so it makes some sense. But we're calling this place Weedsport Speedway now. They've really done a lot of updating to that place. It's a 3/8 mile D-shaped oval. It originally opened in 1955 as a 1/3 mile over that a guy kind of cut through his berry patch to do some laps with his race car. And overall, it grew and grew and got sold a couple times. And one of the premier dirt tracks throughout the 80s and 90s and through today, and a big concert venue in the 80s as well, bringing in some big time rock and roll acts.
The show aired on Power Tracks as well as Tough Tracks. Both shows are different. If you really want to go back and look at each difference, they are both on YouTube available to watch. We both watched the Tough Tracks version because, as we've covered on this show before, Matt, Power Tracks left a little bit on the editing side for us that just leaves us a little bit wanting more. However, I will say that the Power Tracks episode on YouTube does have a lot better video quality than the one that I watched as far as the Tough Tracks episode that's on YouTube.
Yeah, the Tough Tracks, this is one of the early airings still of the first syndication run of Tough Tracks, where it's using the original intro, the graphics package, and the proprietary music that they did for the show wasn't, a thing yet. And it's still an hour format interlaced with some truck and tractor pulling. We're not going to cover any of that stuff today here in the Retro Monster Truck Review. We're sticking strictly to monster trucks. But even so, we get more action on Tough Tracks because we see all the qualifying, most of the qualifying runs, and 100% less Dick Leak on the Tough Tracks broadcast as well.
Hey, you can never go wrong with a little bit of Dick Leak. But anyway, our lineup right here: Carolina Crusher, Gary Porter, your current national points leader; Awesome Kong and Steve Kane; Bigfoot number 4 and Andy Brass; USA-1 Rod Litzau; Gravedigger and Dennis Anderson; Clydesdale Bennett Clark; Jersey Outlaw with Bob Breen behind the wheel; Buffalo Tremor John Kwasniewski; Mad Dog John Breen; No Problem John Moore; and Nightlife with Dave Wysorick.
A strong lineup here. And the day before, again, we're talking the Digger not being in the house. I believe Star Monster ran the night before to fill out the bracket. They had him kind of on reserve as a local regional guy that was kind of traveling around with TNT at the time. So getting a little bit of mix up here between the 2 days of action. We're covering day number 2, and we start the tough tracks with Scott Douglas saying, hey, USA-1 has won 3 in a row. Can he do 4? It's never been done yet.
Yep, something that had not been done yet in the previous TNT year, and that was winning 4 in a row. And that's Rod Litzau's job out here. Of course, USA-1 missing a little bit of hardware on the front of it after a rollover 2 days prior, I believe, in New York with Buffalo, over in Buffalo. Kind of the same area that Dennis had his big air is the same venue that we had USA-1 have a little bit of a really sliding rollover, I'll call it. He comes off the cars racing Bigfoot in the final. The truck bounces awkwardly to the right, and it just kind of just slowly crawls over. And it ends up being a more violent roll than it looks for USA-1.
Well, now let's find out who is the best of the beast. The Ford, Bigfoot, Andy Brass against the Chevrolet, USA-1 and Rod Litzau. It's the championship tonight in Buffalo.
Richard Lee gets the classic battle. USA-1 Chevrolet going against the Bigfoot Ford. Side by side, Litzau got a pulling trigger right now. He does it. Well, he's going over again.
Litzau has rolled. USA-1 has got the win, but he's rolled over. Rod Litzau is now unbuckled. Steve Wilkie, his crew chief, having it out. Army is down there. Track safety officials are on hand. Guys, try to get us a replay of this. Rod Litzau, here you see at the finish line, bounces with the victory. Sharply goes over on the right side of the truck, completely rolls over, but he is okay, and he is trackside right now. Army's got him.
Well, and that's all because the truck was in 2-wheel drive. He didn't have the front drive shaft at that point. He ran the finals in rear-wheel drive only, takes the win, and we're going to have to cover that Buffalo race here on the Retro Monster Truck Review, because that second night in Buffalo, between the Gravedigger legendary huge jump and big damage fest that he had, and the great racing in the finals with the crash with USA-1, it's a whole discussion unto itself.
You could almost call that the original Gravedigger yard sale, the first jump, that first big Buffalo jump. And then, of course, the USA-1 crash in the final. Buffalo, New York got a heck of a show that weekend, and it is planned. It's on my list for as far as a future episode of the Retro Monster Truck Review. Let's talk Bigfoot, though. Bigfoot comes along on this series in the New York mini-series, coming very late in the TNT season, but it's booked on this New York mini-series here with Andy Brass behind the wheel of Bigfoot number 4. Of course, we all know what they're really working on over at Bigfoot. They're working on number 8, and they decided to sit TNT out. And I don't think in any other major form of motorsports I have seen a competitor that's finished the top 5 in points just go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to take the next year off.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bigfoot kind of ran here and there with TNT. They ran that winter tour before the point series started throughout January, February, and then the point series starts in Chicago and Bigfoot's nowhere to be found. And they kind of do this first little stint of outdoor events, and then all of a sudden for the New York mini series, Bigfoot's back. And then after that, they're gone again. So I'm not sure about the non-televised races, how much TNT did with Bigfoot, in 1989. But as far as the TV shows go, it was very hit and miss. They didn't sit the entire season out. Andy was running with 4 quite a bit with TNT. I'd say darn near 40% of the races overall that were televised, but only half of those, were points races that he was in. So the not going for the points championship itself, at this point, we're in July 16th, 1989 is the show that we're talking about here. And that is a Sunday evening, it looks like, according to my calendar, the second night here in Weedsport. And they're testing the Bigfoot 8 truck at this point. They've got it pretty much done, and they're heading that truck out to do the Tango and Cash movie not too long after that.
Yeah, they're not too far removed or not too far away from doing that. Here in the point standings, though, the lack of Bigfoot is disturbing as far as your top 10 goes. We got Carolina Crusher in the lead at 316 points, and right below him is Equalizer trailing with 280.
Yeah, the top two trucks of the year so far have kind of broken out a little bit. Equalizer not here for this New York mini tour, and at least, you know, for these couple races we're talking about right now. And it's going to give a chance for some other guys to step up, and then Equalizer's going to have to make some time up on the back end in points or at other events that he's at.
Speaking of trucks that are making up time here, a guy who's won 3 in a row going for 4, Rod Litzau, sitting third, 237 points. Directly behind him is Gravedigger and Dennis Anderson, 225 for the Digger. The early season point leader has fallen off his pace just a little bit here due to some parts breakage and part failure. Nightlife directly behind him at 174, and then from that point on, the points are really close. We got Awesome Kong at 143, Wild Hair 142, Mad Dog 138, No Problem 131, and Stomper rounds out your top 10 at 102 points. I got to tell you, it's pretty tight all the way through the top 10, but Gary Porter's sitting pretty comfortable, at least at the beginning of this episode, with a 36-point lead.
Yeah, and that 6 through 9 area, you know, you've got 4 guys that are separated only by 12 points. So everybody's going to be looking to make a move here in Weedsport in terms of the point series.
Army's going to talk with Rod Litzau and Dennis Anderson right here. Rod's won the last 3 events, but the Gravedigger is back. Dennis says he's got a new engine. He's got new power. He's ready to take on these guys on tour. The quote that stood out to me there was, "I'm on the warpath for USA-1."
USA-1 has really been running strong. Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger's been having some problems. Army Armstrong is talking with both of them.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Cayuga County Speedway in New York State, where the Gravedigger is going after USA-1. USA-1, 3 for 3 in the last outing on the TNT Monster Truck Challenge Series, but the Gravedigger, Dennis Anderson, is going after USA-1. Dennis, tonight's the night you've got to start your move.
Yeah, we put a new motor in for this tour, and I think I got enough power to handle the guys out here. If I can just use that power and keep it from breaking the truck, I think I can stick it out, because I'm definitely on the warpath tonight for USA-1.
So the Virginia-based Gravedigger is going after the Minnesota-based USA-1 vehicle. Now keep in mind, this is the only truck to win back-to-back 3 times this year. Something you had to do. 3 weeks ago, you're in a no-man's land. You had to start winning, and you've done it. The truck is actually flipped, but you took a win over Bigfoot. He's here tonight, the Carolina Crusher. Awesome Kong, they found some lost horsepower. It's going to be a battle tonight, and everybody wants to take that flag away from you, Rod.
Yeah, I know that, but, you know, I got the flag, and I'm going to try keeping holding on to it. The truck's been running good. We're running strong right now. You know, we had a little mishap there, but, you know, we came back to this race, and before we head home, it's just running excellent. We didn't want to change a thing. This thing is just powering out.
Yes, indeed. Dennis ain't messing around. He's had a frustrating last few weeks in general, and he's coming after these guys. He wants the silver flag back, hanging off the back of the 1950. Well, technically a 1950. It's really a 54 body with a 50 front clip, but it's a 1950 Chevrolet called the Gravedigger. He wants that TNT Championship flag back on his truck.
And the championship flag that's sitting on the back of USA-1, of course, is another Chevrolet. Rod said he's going to go out there and try to hold on to the flag despite the rollover he had 2 days prior in Buffalo. The front of USA-1 is completely missing, so you're going to get to see all of that horsepower on full display right there in the front of the truck.
The triple Predator carburetors hanging out in the breeze for the USA-1 truck, and maybe that just lets the engine breathe a little bit better and lets Rod put that foot to the floor even harder.
He's got some more oxygen getting to that motor. He's going to have a little bit more horsepower. They say at this point into the show that last week anyone under 7 seconds was fast, and in our first qualifying pass here, Carolina Crusher comes out and runs a 6.95, really setting the pace for everybody here in Buffalo.
Yeah, you know, night 2, they don't replace the cars for the TNT Monster Truck Challenge for these second days, so you'd expect the times to get a little bit faster in most cases because they've run on this track already. They're getting more and more time on it, and the cars are not quite as much of an obstacle in terms of absorbing the impact. They're pretty smashed down already, and they're going to help the trucks, you know, kind of just bounce and go forward. But looking at this first run of the Carolina Crusher, it's not exactly the perfect run. It's a smooth run, I'd say. But that second jump is a little bit cause for concern. The truck pitches way over to the right off that second ramp.
Yeah, the ramps are going to be the story of the night, I believe, as we move on to our next qualifier here, Awesome Kong. Most notably on Awesome Kong right here, you see the word sponsor written on the rear fenders. The Dane brothers are really trying to get some sponsorship on the side of that truck right there, and they are looking for anything and anything that they can get on that truck. It's really good placement, honestly. And years later, you would see this on, I believe it was a Robert Yates racing car for NASCAR. They were looking for sponsors, so they wrote the number of people that watched the broadcast on the hood of the car trying to attract sponsorship.
Hey, you do what you can to get the people on the side there. That's a cool effort, and you got a lot of open space there on the Awesome Kong. You know, that's still a full length body. It's a narrow truck, but it's full length, and there's a lot of room for advertising space. So the Dane boys, like you said, trying to get somebody to help them out, and they eventually would get it with Jerry Janke, the engine builder, giving them a hand for the 1990 season.
A 6.66 qualifying time for Awesome Kong. And as Army Armstrong puts it, a wild animal that's tasting blood for the first time. Awesome Kong looking really good out here onto the track as Bigfoot is our next qualifier. Andy catches the last car off the first set with the rear tires. Bonsai's the second set, though, puts in a 6.85, a really good run for the Blue Ford.
Yeah, and we're starting to see that last car on that left-hand side, Carolina Crusher kind of caught it in a similar way. I'm not sure if it's the way that the launch ramp is on that first set of cars or if it's just that last car sits a little higher, but Kong looked like he navigated that first jump a little smoother, and I think that's where the difference is in the times here between the right and left lane. All three trucks so far have run good runs. Andy really puts the power down in no man's land and is able to launch over the second set, pretty much, clears the finish line with the front tires in the air right at the end of the cars and doesn't slow him down at all. So he made up some time, but I think the far lane may be the place to be tonight based on these first three runs so far.
Yeah, after you watch these first three runs, I think the far lane, aka the right lane, is going to be where guys want to be for the rest of the evening. Gravedigger's out next here, and we get a clip earlier in the day, and Army saying the tired, dirty, worn out, long way from home Dennis Anderson. Dennis talks about the jump in Buffalo where he basically landed in the shop, damage he sustained as a result. He went back into his little phone book, had parts flown in, including a transfer case, new drive shafts, and loops. We go back to Dennis, and he does not really have a good launch here, and something you rarely see out of the Gravedigger is a conservative run. But they pointed out on the broadcast here, Matt, that Dennis probably just wants to get a pass in as he's not had a good start to this New York Mini Tour.
USA-1 at 6.46, and there you look at Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger. Dennis has been doing a lot of work on that truck, having some problems earlier in the year, trying to come back strong. Army's with Dennis Anderson right now.
Well, right now we're standing with the tired, dirty, worn out, long way from home, Dennis Anderson. Dennis, you and the Gravedigger, the last time we saw you, it was spectacular. About 60 feet in the air, 80 mile an hour. Things looked great, and then you landed. What happened?
Well, really, Army, what I done is I landed in the shop. I busted a transfer case. I tore the whole drive line out. What I done is I took off with this new motor, and I didn't think the motor was going to run that hard. It really surprised me. I got more air than I've ever gotten in a monster truck before, and it was, like you said, it was spectacular. I saw a video of it, a replay, and it was a wild ride. It didn't seem that wild when I was inside, but after I saw it on film and saw parts flying, it was wild.
How did you get the truck back together? Because the incident happened a couple of 100 miles away from here. You're on tour, a long way from home. How'd you pull it back together so quick?
Well, what I done is I dug in my little black phone book, called up all my buddies that I get parts from, and I had some parts flown in. I had a transfer case flown in. They got here like 10 o'clock at night, and we thrashed on the truck all night long. I had new drive shafts made, new safety loops and stuff like that, and we just thrashed on the truck, and we're here to do it again.
So everything's back to 100%, you're ready to go again?
Right, we're 100% stronger than ever, so, we found a couple little spots that we could toughen it up a little bit, so maybe it'll hang in there.
Stronger than ever, he said. He's going to have to be to beat the competition that's here in Weedsport, New York tonight. We've already seen several runs under 7 seconds. Now we'll get a look at Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger's qualifying run. He did not get out of the gate at all.
No, I don't think he was trying to drive it out of the gate that hard. He just wants to keep it together and talk about the confidence factor. He just wants to go back and not have to work on a truck. An 875 is what we hear, Scott.
No, and this is one of those times when Dennis, I'm guessing, probably isn't doing so well financially. He's struggling to get himself through this season. He's had so much breakage so far, and he would always tell the stories later on about there was times where he's ready to hang it up, and he would read those fan letters, and it would get him charged up to keep going. And I'm willing to bet that this New York Mini Tour was one of those times that happened because he just had nothing but bad luck. He puts the bigger engine in the truck, and he thinks he's going to do so well, and it just really doesn't go his way. And you do what you can. this is 1989. There's no Amazon Prime here.
Exactly.
You're making phone calls to buddies that you know, and like Dennis said, you got to pull the little black phone book out and work your magic to get stuff in, because they're racing every night right now, the last 4 nights in a row, 2 in Buffalo, and then a hop, skip, and a jump over here to Weedsport. This is the second night. And Dennis, is missing competitions, and that means he's missing getting paid if he can't race. So he's got to be able to get that truck running, and if it takes flying parts in overnight, whatever you got to do, have somebody go down and get them for you, 14 hours round trip. That's how you did it back then. I know Tad Goad, I was talking to him before we did our Louisville 92 episode, where he drove all night back and forth to the shop to get a new engine for the new No Problem truck, because John blew his #1 engine up in intros the first night. So you got to do what you got to do to make showtime.
Dennis with an 8.75 qualifying time right here. Dennis, always a respectable person out there onto the track. I do want to point out as well that probably a lot of people are trying to help get that truck going too, because they know if Gravedigger's not going, the house might suffer just a little bit, even back in 1989. Like I said earlier, though, the right lane, far lane seems to be where the quicker qualifying times are coming from, and that's where USA-1 was, and that is why Rod Litzau is your #1 qualifier with a 6.46, clearing both sets of cars during his run.
Yeah, and we didn't want to skip over that too much, because he ran right before Gravedigger here on the broadcast, and he just puts in a picture-perfect run. This is a USA-1 kind of track where the ramps are a little low, especially over that first set of cars. It's not pitching the truck up too high. It lets Rod put that power down when the truck's on the ground and really get the speed going with those non-planetary axles.
Exactly. USA-1's going to have your bye in round #1. Clydesdale, with #5 qualifier, is going to take on Jersey Outlaw. #3, Bigfoot's going to be taking on #8, Gravedigger. #4, Carolina Crusher taking on #9, Buffalo Tremor. Mad Dog comes in at #6, going to take on the 11th qualifier, No Problem. Awesome Kong at #2, taking on #7, Dave Wysorick and Nightlife. So we head into round #1 here. The first pairing we're going to see is Outlaw and Clydesdale. We're not going to get to see USA-1's bye run.
Yeah, but you know what? I really like all of these matchups. You look at these on paper, and they all look like they're going to be really, really good races. Outlaw and Clydesdale, 2 very similar trucks in terms of speed on the tour. Bigfoot and Gravedigger, I mean, that's the show right there. Your dream matchup, and the fans are going to get it in round #1. Crusher and Tremor, Crusher's the points leader, but Buffalo Tremor's a new truck, and he's got a big engine behind
Hometown
that
truck.
And and it's your local favorite as well. And then No Problem and Mag Dog. Hey, this could be the kind of night that John Moore bites up and steals a win away from some guys. And then Awesome Kong and Nightlife, you've got the confidence behind Steve Kane, and Dave Wysorick's always consistent.
Exactly. Great first round pairings that we have right here. One thing we didn't touch on when we were going through our driver lineup, Jersey Outlaw and Bob Breen. Why is that? Mike Wine actually broke his fingers and cannot drive the Jersey Outlaw. Bennett Clark drove it the night before, but now they're matched up against each other in round 1, so Bob Breen's going to take over the driving reins of the Outlaw Ford.
Dave Grimm's never been happier.
Bob Breen, oh my God, Bob Breen!
These trucks leave together, and Clydesdale pushes a bit harder to get the win. Breen puts on a smooth, safe run, gets the truck safely to the next round. Bennett shows the Super Chicken tied to the front of the Clydesdale truck that brings him some good luck. That's a great interview, and we're going to pipe that audio in.
We're at the Cayuga County Speedway, and our first-round matchup, Jersey Outlaw versus Clydesdale. You may remember last week on Tough Track, Mike Wine broke his fingers driving the Jersey Outlaw, was unable to drive. There you see Mike. Well, Bennett Clark got out of Clydesdale and drove Jersey Outlaw for him last week. He can't do it now because they're matched up against each other, so it'll be Bob Breen and Wild Hair in the Jersey Outlaw.
Well, now, Bob Breen normally drives the Wild Hair truck. He stepped up and said, I'll take over the points run for you right now. You know, these guys, they travel all over the country, and they really go head-to-head, and they battle with each other. But right now, we got a guy that's having a little bit of problem. Who comes to his aid? Some of the other drivers. Bob Breen takes the shot. He'll be driving the Ford truck for the first time in the lane closest to the camera. Meanwhile, Bennett Clark, he's going after the very same points. That friendship goes down to 2s right now. Outlaw versus the Clydesdale. Who's it going to be? Clydesdale looking strong. He's there.
Out of Powder Springs, Fairgrounds, Georgia. Bennett Clark in Clydesdale getting the first-round victory over Bob Breen driving the Jersey Outlaw. Well, Bennett Clark drove that truck last week. He beats it this week. Army's going to talk to it.
Bennett, a first-round win, but that's going to put you against USA-1 right off the bat tonight.
Well, I guess he's a while ago when I heard him running, it looked like he was loading up pretty heavy. I think I'll have a chance to take him tonight.
Who's your passenger who's been riding with you?
This is my super chicken. He's been giving me a good look, so I've been riding with him.
Whatever it takes to win, ladies and gentlemen, like any other kind of motorsport.
All right, Matt. This is, like you were talking earlier, the show. When you would come to a monster truck event and you saw Gravedigger and Bigfoot booked at the same venue back at this era, I mean, they would hype that up like you would not believe. On one end, you've got the bloodthirsty Dennis Anderson that's going to drive that truck as hard as he possibly can to try to get the win. On the other side, you've got the Ford corporately backed Bigfoot machine that is going to do the same thing to beat that old redneck from North Carolina.
Yeah, and, we're talking Dennis, the rising star at this time. He's becoming the fan favorite. They're pushing the Gravedigger on the TNT advertising big time. You're going to get to see Bigfoot as well. They're pushing him. This is the show that everybody wants to see. It's something that we talk about still to this day because, we haven't seen it now for 10 years, Bigfoot go up against Gravedigger. And, it's unfortunate we don't get that anymore, but we can at least relive it here through these old videos. And every time we see a new one that pops up on the internet, you never know who's going to win. It's always going to be exciting.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the rivalry in monster trucks is Bigfoot versus Gravedigger. Here's one of the many times that they faced each other, and this one on the New York Mini Tour. Scott says this race is worth the price of admission alone. It's a dream matchup. They leave together. Dennis gets a better bounce over the first set of cars. He's in the bad lane, by the way. He's in the left lane, the near lane closest to the camera. He hammers it down, though, and gets the win over Bigfoot. However, when he lands, a bunch of smoke pours out of the back of the Gravedigger.
All right, there's Dennis Anderson. Those eyes, those red eyes glaring at you can mean only the Gravedigger. And what a matchup. You talk about one race being worth the price of a ticket. Gravedigger and Bigfoot. What a matchup. There's Dennis getting ready to go up against Andy Brass and Bigfoot.
Brass will be working a far lane away from the camera. He's kind of smooth. Everything's looking good. He's a consistent factor in this race. However, the unknown of those awesome red lights of the Gravedigger. We have no idea what that truck's going to do. And worse than us not knowing, the driver himself doesn't know. The truck has been so erratic on this tour. Look at that. Whoa, just like a hunter, he pulled the trigger. He got the win, but it may have cost him a lot of smoke coming out of the back, Scott.
But he did get the win indeed. Dennis Anderson gets the victory over Andy Brass and Bigfoot. Of course, the fast losers may come back. We'll see in a little bit. Army's going to talk to both drivers.
Well, when it comes to monster truck racing, fellas, it doesn't get any better than this. You took the win, Dennis Anderson, but it cost you a whole lot.
Yeah, it did. We still got a rear drive shaft problem. That's what I done. I just threw the back drive shaft out of it.
Can you get back? Do you have another drive shaft in the pit area that you can get back in this competition?
Yeah, I have a spare drive shaft, but I busted the yoke on the pinion shaft, so we can't fix it in time to come back.
Okay, so that's going to bring you back into this thing, Andy, and you were right there with him. I believe you'd be coming back anyway because they're bringing back two quick losers. An awfully good race. They just keep getting closer, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Like you say, you don't get much better than this. Dennis, one of the better running trucks out here on the circuit.
Well, we had smoke coming out before, and then even more smoke once he lands. It looks like there's some damage to the black and green Chevy.
Yep, Black and Green Wrecking Machine is doing the wrecking part very well on this evening. Army interviews both drivers. Dennis says he threw a rear drive shaft on the run. He actually split the yoke on the pinion and on the pinion shaft, and he will not be back later this evening. He actually does end up coming back. He is he actually comes back as not the fast loser. He comes back as the winner of the previous round, but we'll get into that just a little bit here. Dennis comes back in two-wheel drive. Andy's going to go on regardless, though, as a fast loser. So each truck advancing, even though there's a lot of trouble on the pass.
It's, in hindsight, you sit there and say, man, you got two good trucks. It would have been smarter for them to kind of just run at 85%, and they both probably would have went on because one of them was going to be a fast loser. But hey, you're up against your arch.
Yeah, you're up against the arch rival right there.
Yeah, your nemesis in terms of the crowd favorite, one or the other, is probably going to be Bigfoot or Gravedigger, or maybe USA-1 in this case, still a very popular truck at the time. So, you're not going to back down is what I'm getting at, no matter what the stakes are. Even if you're probably both going to go on to the next round, you want to beat that guy in that other lane.
Doesn't matter if it's qualifying, round one, or the finals. These two trucks are going to run each other as hard as they possibly can every single time they race against one another. And in this instance, Dennis not looking good for the rest of the evening. I will say, though, if anybody remembers the I want to say it was one of the Digger DVDs, they have this race featured, and you hear them talking about Dennis blowing the engine on the pass. That call came from the Power Tracks episode with Richard Leake and Army Armstrong covering it. Tough Tracks episode, a little bit different call there, and we'll pipe that audio in as well when we play the broadcast of the race.
This is Andy Brass, the driver of Bigfoot, and he is ready to do war with Gravedigger, Dennis Anderson out of Chesapeake, Virginia. Dennis will not win the national championship this year. He's out of that points race, but he always puts on a wild and woolly show.
Well, Richard, I've always said this guy's got somebody in his family that was a kamikaze pilot. Believe me, you're going to see why. If he's going to lay down a run, it will be a good run. I've never seen Anderson make an easy run. For bragging rights, Bigfoot and the Gravedigger. The Gravedigger, probably one of the most popular trucks on the tour right now. Everywhere he goes, people want to watch him fly, and they're not disappointed tonight in Weedsport. Look at this. Anderson pulls the trigger and literally explodes the engine on the run.
Number 4, Carolina Crusher, going to be taking on Buffalo Tremor next, Matt. Tremor has the same engine as you would see in a double B funny car, is what Army Armstrong says as they get to line up right here. A lot of horsepower under that Buffalo Tremor machine, but he's got the most consistent and the national points leader in the other lane.
Yeah, that's the challenge here. Buffalo Tremor, we'd go to see him have some success later in the year toward the fall. I think he takes a win, in Fishersville on a big long track where he can let that engine stretch its legs, kind of like the USA-1, big time engine, and he's going for the top end speed. But here in Weedsport, just not going to work for him. He is one of the guys that doesn't get a very good run out of that right lane. The rear end kind of pops up off the first set of cars and goes to the side, and that's going to spell the end of the night for the Buffalo Tremor, at least in this round number 1 action.
All right, so there you hear it. Problems again for Gravedigger. Let's continue with the first round as Carolina Crusher and Gary Porter, the national point leader, will get the challenge from the Buffalo Tremor. This is John Kwasniewski out of Lackawanna, New York, just outside of Buffalo.
The Buffalo Tremor runs an engine that, for all you drag racing fans, it's the same engine you're going to see in a double B funny car. However, this young man's got to stack real tall in a monster truck. He's in front of local folks to see what they can do. The Carolina Crusher trying to pull his skid back. Crusher a little bit smoother, and that's paid off, John. Whoa, it's getting real spooky on the last set of cars on the top end of the track right now in New York.
And in the other lane, Gary Porter, Carolina Crusher, has a smooth run, but the ending of the run is, as Army Armstrong's going to say, spooky. He gets off to the right side of the ramp and has to launch crooked over the jump. He actually lands decently, but he's off to the side of those cars and just sends the truck into a pretty bouncy fit after the finish line right there. Just as they start to call Gary Porter smooth, he gets out of shape. I thought it was a good call, and it actually sounded like a live call from these guys.
Yeah, and you see both trucks are really bouncing around out of shape here, and that's what makes it kind of spectacular in terms of both these trucks are kind of out of control at the same time on the track, and it behooves Army to make the call that end of the track is starting to get spooky because it's beat up. The cars are all crushed down. Some of the guys are landing into the dirt ramps a little bit at the end of the cars, and that's kind of throwing them different directions. It really is a little bit unpredictable.
Number 11, No Problem, going to be taking on Mad Dog right here. Like you said in your notes, this is the kind of race that No Problem could steal a win at. Despite qualifying in the 11th position, Mad Dog and No Problem here are still a pretty even matchup. You got a truck that qualified midway through the field versus a truck that qualified at the tail end. Never, ever count out John Moore, though.
When the light turns green, John Moore just absolutely drills the Mad Dog truck off of the line. A hard launch for the No Problem Ford.
Yeah, he launches really hard. Both trucks bouncing wildly off the first set of cars. Mad Dog, though, with the worst bounce in the rear end there through no man's land. That truck is bouncing really hard on the tail of the dog, as we'll put it. They get squared up for the second set, and No Problem takes this win. But I'm going to tell you, Matt, it's not by much.
All right, our next matchup in the first round will send the Mad Dog and John Green out of Jefferson City, Missouri, on the left-hand side, or actually now the closest side of the screen to us as we look at him from down the track, up against No Problem, John Moore, out of Lafayette, Tennessee, the Ford Bronco.
John Moore runs a supercharged engine at Ford Bronco. He'll be in the lane to our right from this camera view. However, he goes against a naturally aspirated or carbureted It burst up the Chevrolet into a little bit of bad bounce. It's going to cost the Mad Dogs. We could have seen a major upset right there. Not to be the case. The Ford's going to come back in a win column.
It's a close race, and you see both of these guys are having to correct and get out of it before they get up onto the second set of cars, because Mad Dog's bouncing hard into the face of the ramps. John Moore's trying to get his truck squared up to get a legal run up over the cars. You know, both trucks, they only clear like 2-3 cars in the stack and are driving across the top of them to the finish line. And the difference here, Mad Dog's coming on strong and trying to come from behind, but as you said, no problem, hangs on for that round one win. I would have to call it a mild upset at this point, because Mad Dog's been one of the most competitive trucks on the 89 Tour and has taken wins early in the season in Uniondale. So, you know, we're talking one of the top guys, but John Moore always there, ready to strike at a moment's notice.
Yeah, John Moore could strike at any time. This race to me was like a battle of who could get corrected quick enough to get to the finish line. And ironically, if we think back to our Toledo episode, these two trucks paired up against each other, and it was kind of a same issue. If I remember right, the green truck gets off a little bit. He has to correct, and by that time, John Moore passes him over the cars.
Yeah, you can never count him out. And Army, you know, in the post-race interview is saying, what are you doing to get out of the hole so much faster than everybody else? And John says it's a good transmission, and, you know, taking care of everybody, it's just no problem.
Exactly. He's very short and sweet interview from John Moore right there, but very to the point as we move on to our next race. Awesome Kong, number 2 qualifier, taking on Nightlife. Not much in the notes about this one, Matt. Awesome Kong sails on with a good run. Nightlife kind of just limps through the course a wee bit behind him.
Nightlife, Dave Wysoric out of Grand Island, Nebraska. You look at the consistent Nebraskan right there against the sometimes spectacular Steve Kane and Awesome Kong. He's a driver who's been on a roll as of late, but he's going to have to, you know, really strap it in if he's going to get a win over Nightlife.
And I guarantee you, he is not going to take it easy on this Nightlife truck. He knows Wysoric can hammer him real hard. Let's see what's going to happen. Awesome Kong out. Boy, this kid is just, you can see every run, the confidence. The truck gets quicker and quicker. He gets more confident. Definitely going to have to watch this kid tonight in New York.
He does. You know, you wonder if something's wrong with the Nightlife Chevrolet, because Wysoric usually runs a little harder than that. He really just, you know, it almost looks like he's running at about 75%. After he comes off the first set of cars, he kind of mails it in, and maybe he just wants to make sure he gets to that next show without any trouble. But he was far enough ahead that maybe it wasn't even worth pulling the throttle and possibly breaking something, because Awesome Kong was out on him over that first set of cars.
Yeah, and on my notes here, I actually put the Flying Texan is low and fast on this pass. Normally, you would see the Awesome Kong truck flying and almost clearing every car at a finish line jump, but not this time. He just kind of sails it over the last cars and goes on to the next round.
That's right. We get a pulling segment here in between, which we're going to skip over, and then we head into round number 2 on the TNT Monster Truck Challenge. Who do we got in the brackets there, Josh?
We got USA-1, our number 1 qualifier, going to be taking on Clydesdale. Bigfoot's coming back as a fast loser to take on Gravedigger. Carolina Crusher and Buffalo Tremor is a rematch, another rematch. It's 2 rematches so far. And then we've got Awesome Kong taking on No Problem as we head into our next race here. According to Army Armstrong, no one's ever won 4 in a row. And who do we got in this race? The guy that's got a shot at it, Rod Litzau in USA number 1.
Yeah, 2 Chevrolets going at it here, 2 of the longer wheelbase trucks as well. And Litzau has to go 1 race at a time, Army says, because that's the only way he's going to win this 4 in a row. We get a zoom in of the big engine on the USA-1, and I was mistaken earlier. It looks like we're only running 2 out of the 3 Predator carburetors on it at this point due to the crash in Buffalo. So despite that, still putting a lot of power down. And as far as I'm concerned, he punches a super fast run in, and the cars are flattened out, and this is the kind of night for Rod Litzau.
Exactly. This is the kind of track, the kind of night, and the kind of lane that Rod Litzau likes, and that's what USA-1 has. And I tell you what, Clydesdale puts on a decent run right here, but just no match for Rod.
USA-1, Rod Litzau. We documented for you last week how he flipped here 2 weeks ago on tough track. Came back and won despite all the modifications last week. Tonight, going 1 step further, Army, he sets the fast qualifying run.
Well, the confidence factor, I keep bouncing back to that word, but you can see it in the drivers. And when I do the interview with them at the end of the track, I usually I'll have my hand on their shoulder or something when I'm talking to them. You can feel their heart pounding, and Litzau is really pumped. He wants to go. Nobody has ever won 4 in a row. Litzau could be the first, but he's got to win 1 race at a time. And speaking of races, he's got to put Clydesdale on the trailer in this round.
Bennett
guy is possessed for this win, and you can just see it oozing out of him.
Rod Litzau is flat on a roll, and USA-1 has put himself in the semifinals as he tries to get that historic 4th win in a row and continue to hold the Tough Track silver flag.
Not at all. I mean, you look at this far lane, and the difference that I'm starting to see here is Rod is clearing the cars more so than anybody else. And even in that right lane where the ramps aren't as bad, it doesn't matter for him because he's trying to clear that entire first set. And in this round, he kind of catches the rear end on that last car, but it settles down nice. He's not, landing completely on the set of cars, and that sets him up good for no man's land. It's just a straight shot for the USA-1.
And anytime USA-1 is on all fours in no man's land and coming to the finish line, your chances of winning are probably about 0.09% at that point.
Yeah, it's definitely not in your favor if you're up against the pearl blue and white over there in the other lane. And now, boy, twice in one night, Josh, we're getting to see Gravedigger versus Bigfoot.
That we are. However, this time Digger is pretty injured. Digger's only going to be in 2-wheel drive. And if you notice here, Matt, these trucks have swapped lanes. It makes you wonder if they came to some sort of an agreement back in maybe the pits. This is all speculation on my part as I was watching this. Makes you wonder if they came into some sort of an agreement to allow Bigfoot to take the near lane. So see if Andy was more stable. Or excuse me, take the far lane. See if Andy would maybe more stable over there with the Bigfoot truck. But at the end of the interview right here, of course, Bigfoot's going to go on and take the win. Digger only in 2-wheel drive, front-wheel drive only for the truck, just front-wheel spin. But hell, Andy doesn't even care. He doesn't trust Dennis. He goes out there and just puts on a really wild pass for Bigfoot.
Yeah, I'm going to take a guess and say that Andy went to that lane because he had the lane choice and he wanted to see what that lane was developing like because he knew Dennis wasn't going to put up that much of a fight. If he was going to get a chance to take a more or less a buy run in that lane, it was going to be then. And he did qualify in that lane, but he ran the round, before in the right lane and lost. So maybe he's thinking, I need to go back to the left lane and check it out. Who knows what's going through Andy's head at the time, but he really does go hard, and he still isn't getting a very good landing off of that first set of cars, though.
We're going to fill another one of them right now. It's a rematch, that opening round matchup between Gravedigger and Bigfoot. The Digger won in the first round, but Bigfoot is back as a quick loser.
Scott, I don't know if we're going to be able to call it a rematch or not. I tell you why. Yes, they are the same two trucks, but what we're going to see is a wounded Gravedigger. He lost the rear-wheel drive or the rear axle on his previous run. For safety's sake, I do not look for him to attack the track. This kid's a smart enough driver to know you're in a lot of trouble if you try to run hard in 2-wheel drive only when you're driving a monster truck.
That was the win earlier over Bigfoot, but as Army mentioned, it looks like a crippled Gravedigger against Andy Brass this time around. They're at the starting line and ready to go in this quarterfinal round matchup.
Watch Andy Brass. He's not taking anything for granted. He's jumping out there and going. And I don't blame him because you never know. Dennis Anderson could pull a card out from under the table. That not being the case, Anderson does get the points for the round. That can pay dividends later on when the big money's paid out at the end of the year for the top 10 finishers.
Gravedigger and Dennis Anderson obviously badly crippled as he gets some points but loses the race. Andy Brass and Bigfoot knows he'll go to the semifinals where he's going to meet USA-1.
That's my question, though, and this is something I wonder. And if anybody was a TNT official, I'd love to know this. Bigfoot is a fast loser. Does it retain lane choice? That was one thing I was wondering, and that's why I had the speculation in my head to see if Andy was going to be going into the other lane. Does Bigfoot retain lane choice, even though he's taking on a truck that necessarily beat him in round number 1?
I'll have to find somebody with a TNT rule book to see. Chris Romanis, we may have to be dialing you up for some help.
Exactly. Chris, by God, call the show. Carolina Crusher, Buffalo Tremor, another rematch right here. Fast loser again. The trucks leave together, and at mid-track, they're still even. Tremor, though, has a really bad time trying to adjust to hit that second ramp. It almost seems like the truck has a little bit of a body roll trying to get to the jump. He's trying to correct the truck, and it's just not working out in his favor. And by that point, that's the only mistake that Gary Porter needs.
Carolina Crusher, current national point leader, gets a rematch with Buffalo Tremor. Now, Carolina Crusher beat him in the first round, but the Tremor is back as the second fastest loser from that opening round. So John Kwasniewski, out of the Buffalo area, gets another crack at the current point leader.
Well, Kwasniewski can do something. He can really make this kid have a nightmare. The Carolina Crusher, the reason being, Kwasniewski's not up in a point chase. Carolina Crusher is, the pressure's on the Crusher. Kwasniewski's in front of his hometown folks. He's got a good run going. The Crusher takes a better landing up that second jump. He'll advance. Boy, the track is really getting spooky down here. They're not bouncing up and down. They're bouncing left and right, Scott.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a closer run than round number 1 in terms of getting to that second set. But Tremor, you can see the chassis kind of unloads in no man's land and leans over, like you said. He's straight for the ramp, but he just can't put the power down like Porter can between the cars. And this one's a little bit closer than round 1 because he doesn't take as bad of a bounce, but the end result is the same. Crusher is moving on to the semifinals.
Yep, Carolina Crusher moving on to the semifinals, though Army incorrectly says in the interview here that he's going to have Foot in the semifinals. Not a big error from Army. We'll let that one slide from one of the greatest announcers of all time. As we move into No Problem and Awesome Kong right here. Kong qualified in the right lane. However, now he is in the left lane, perhaps thinking, and if I know Steve Kane, he's probably thinking, is not necessarily putting No Problem over there for the fact that, hey, you know what? I'm going to give him a shot. He's more or less putting him over there so he can get a run in this left lane, knowing he may not have lane choice later in the evening.
That's a good strategy. You got to try it out if if you think you can get by this guy without too much trouble, you go in that other lane and see if you can make it work and get an idea of what you're in for in the next round, assuming you can win.
Both trucks are going to launch hard right here, as Army Armstrong says this is a toss-up. Awesome Kong gets the better first jump and holds on for about a 3/4 of a truck length win. John drove hard, but that first jump landing was the difference right here for the No Problem machine. Awesome Kong, a little bit longer truck, a lot more stable in no man's land.
Speaking of the best of them, and hardball, this kid out of Texas is loving New York because it all is coming together for him. Who's it going to be? Really, Scott, I got to say it's going to be a toss-up. I don't know whether the Ford or the Chevrolet's going to the next round. I do know this is going to be a good race.
We're going to find out in about 7 seconds because they're already underway.
Awesome Kong flexes his muscle. But Moore tries to come back. No. The Chevrolet out of Texas.
A valiant run by John Moore and No Problem. Really tried to hit it hard on that second set. And the No Problem Ford Bronco gave a good accounting of himself. But the victory goes to Steve Kane and Awesome Kong, who continues to be very strong out of Killeen, Texas.
Yeah, the difference there is coming off the first set of cars again. You see them, they approach the first ramp together and No Problem launching again very hard, just as hard as the Awesome Kong truck, but just can't make it stick between the cars. And he that landing, it's the difference here. And it seems like the lanes, depending on how you land off that first set of cars, is starting to make more of a difference than just being in one lane or the other lane at this point, because we're starting to see more wins come out of the left-hand lane.
Yeah, and the more that I notice as this bracket goes on, it seems like the first jump on the left-hand side might have gotten worked on just a little bit, because before guys were launching and they weren't quite getting those rear tires over the last car. Now they're pushing it a little farther out. They're getting a little bit more of a launch out of that side. But if they indeed work on the ramp over there, I don't know that it's going to last throughout the entire night. As Steve Kane says here at the very end, he's trying to get as much horsepower as he can. He's just going to have to adjust his shifting here. He doesn't think the truck's getting enough horsepower.
Yeah, he looks like a red-headed Tom Selleck there in that interview, too, with that mustache. It's glorious.
Play Miami Vice now for right now. Preview from the Final Four as we actually give away one of the matchups here in the preview. That was something that's a big thumbs down on my point right there, and it's something that I've touched on before in Retro Monster Truck Review history. Is I hate the fact that they preview races and they give them away sometimes, and this is one of them. We're not going to do it right here. We're going to wait till we get to the matchup. But here, first pairing that we have in the semifinals is probably, as far as horsepower-wise, the biggest rivalry in monster trucks at this point.
What is it? USA-1 versus Bigfoot, another dream matchup. And then on the other side of the ladder, you've got Carolina Crusher versus Awesome Kong, which are two of the more consistent guys throughout the season so far. So if you have to pick a Final Four and you know the Gravedigger's out of it, I mean, this is probably the four I'm picking.
Yeah, you can't get any better than this Final Four right here. Even though our graphic incorrectly places Gravedigger in the Final Four, which Scott Douglas correctly points out on his run through the bracket right here. This is a 1988 championship rematch right here, and Scott says there is no doubt that this is the biggest rivalry in the sport over the last couple of years, and it might be slowly dying down. at this point. However, it is still one of those matchups that when you announce the white Ford versus the blue, the white Chevrolet versus the blue Ford, it's one that's going to make the crowd pop a little bit.
For sure, we're talking the popularity of Gravedigger rising, but this really is still one of the top rivalries because this is what they're seeing on TV from last year during this time. These two trucks going against each other every week in the finals on the Power Track show that's airing, still through the summer of '89 here. And it's going to be a big time race no matter what. And we go into this race and the trucks leave together, but it's that landing again off the first set of cars. Andy bounces really hard. Rod gets a huge lead, but then we see him kind of coast across the finish line.
What a sensational Final Four matchup. And we've talked in recent weeks about the way Bigfoot and Awesome Kong have been battling, but over the last couple of years, there's no doubt the biggest rivalry in this sport has been USA-1 against Bigfoot. Army, they're about to renew it here in Weedsport.
Yeah, there's no doubt about the rivalry. We told you the story. This rivalry goes back to the originators of the sport. Everett Jasper came into USA-1, Bob Chandler with the Bigfoot, but right now, the second generation win goes to the Chevrolet USA-1 with Litzau doing it driving.
Yeah, Rod builds up a lead right here. He actually coasts across the finish line to save equipment. Andy has that really bad bounce, which, in all honesty, is a very rare thing that you would see out of Bigfoot number 4 to have a really bad bounce like that. But it's something that happens every now and then, and it can happen to anybody at this point in the stage of the sport. And this point, it happens to Bigfoot. Cost him the win right here as USA-1, and your note says spanks Bigfoot.
He got him. And I'm not so sure that Rod was actually saving the equipment here. When he talks to Army after the race, he says he's having issues with his batteries in the bed of the truck. They may not be secured down, or I'm not sure what the issue is, but I think they cut power to the truck as the truck was bouncing off the first set of cars. And Rod says he was lucky that he had the lead that he did because he was able to still win it. But I'm pretty sure the truck just cut clean on him due to the battery issue.
It very well could have. I had almost forgotten about that point. It's a good thing you said that. I'd almost forgotten about the battery issue that he had. It's something that can definitely happen in one of these trucks, and it's a reason that they are very secure down in the lower portion of the chassis these days.
Yeah, we're going to head to this second final or semifinal round action here. We've got a red truck. We got a yellow truck. It's, if you like McDonald's, you can't be disappointed about this one. So,
or if you're a Hulk Hogan fan.
Well, that too, it's going to be running wild here in Weedsport. We've got Carolina Crusher, Awesome Kong, the two Chevrolets, one skinny one, one tall one, and they leave together coming off this first set of cars. The bounce game happens again for Awesome Kong, and then he just backs out of it.
Now, we'll see who Litzau will face in the championship. It's either going to be that truck, Steve Kane's Awesome Kong, or the national points leader, Gary Porter and Carolina Crusher. The Crusher badly wants to win this one. He badly needs to win it, Army. He's trying to hold off this charge of Rod Litzau in the points.
Yeah, the pressure again goes back on Porter with the Carolina Crusher. Now, he's helped his cause tonight because he has not let USA-1 put him out early. Should he meet him in the final, even come in second, it's not going to help USA-1 that much in the point spread, but that's the negative side of it. The positive side is Carolina Crusher wants to win. Oh, a little bit of bad bounce off the Kong costing. Porter going to the final. It'll be all Chevrolets in the final. Who's going to win it, the Crusher or USA-1? We don't know.
Yeah, unfortunate here for Steve Kane, but Carolina Crusher is going to come from behind essentially to take the win right here. It's going to set up a Chevrolet versus Chevrolet final. Awesome Kong loses power basically between the first and second set of cars, and it was weird to me to see that. It almost sounds like the truck, it doesn't cut, and he keeps driving it throughout the rest of the course. He's kind of off to the side of the jump, but I don't know what exactly happened right there. It was just a weird hit for Awesome Kong.
Yeah, the truck came up on the nose a little bit. I mean, not enough to where you would completely abort the run, I would think, at this point, because Steve Kane's got some experience driving throughout this whole season, but something just didn't quite work out and gets out of shape enough to where he maybe just said, hey, I'm going to back out of it, make sure I get to the next, couple shows. We've still got, 6 more shows to go on this mini tour over the next, week and a half. So sometimes it's better to win the war than to win the battle.
Exactly. We got a cool little segment right here on the road again with Gary Porter, explaining this 16-day, 10-race New York mini tour. And I got to tell you, the one thing I took out of this, Matt, was how awesome his rig was. That is an awesome rig for Gary Porter right there.
First, a special feature here on Tough Tracks. On the road again with Gary Porter. You know, the road is tough, particularly on the New York Mini Series. 10 races, 16 days. And not only do you drive monster trucks, but you maintain your equipment. You're up the road, you're down the road, you're sleeping in strange motels, you may be sleeping back in the trailer, you're eating irregularly. It's tough on the road to maintain a top monster truck team. Here's how Gary Porter lives it.
What I like best about traveling, you know, the TNT Monster Truck Circuit is seeing the country, going to the shows and from the shows, and then sometimes when I have time after the shows, doing the sightseeing, you know, in different cities and meeting the different type of people and just traveling up and down the interstate. A lot of times the kids will come by and be waving and acknowledge to you that, you know, you're the fans and everything, and it really makes traveling a whole lot easier. I do 95% of the work on the truck back at the shop by myself, and then I do 99% of the shows by myself. And it's really hard at times because I'll be working, you know, sometimes 12 and 14 hours on the truck before I have it ready to leave, and then I'll have to drive, you know, maybe 800 to 1,000 miles to a show, and it really gets tiresome sometimes. So I have to do all the driving, and most of the times I'll travel, you know, 400 to 500 miles, stop and sleep a few hours, and then get up and go again. And it can really be hard sometimes trying to do everything, you know, by myself to cut expenses so I can spend money on the truck to try to stay competitive.
You know, part of winning a national points title is being able to survive these grueling road trips and still come out on top. Gary Porter is on top of Carolina Crusher right now. But the question is, can he stay there? And the other question is, can he beat the defending champion, USA-1 and Rod Litzau in the final?
Yeah, we got, like, what is it, kind of a camper on a 1-ton truck setup here, and then he's got the truck on an open trailer with the tires all there as well. So Gary pretty much explaining that he does 95% of the work by himself at the shop, and then pretty much working on his own out at the shows as well, and that's how he gains the reputation of being the lone wolf of the monster truck racing scene. And he's definitely living the life, but he loves seeing the country and meeting all the people at all the different parts around the United States.
Could you imagine being a little kid in your car on the interstate in 1989, just driving down the road, and then you happen to look to your right as you're passing a rig, and oh my goodness, it's Carolina Crusher.
Oh, I'm making the honk the horn sounds for sure out the side window if I'm a little kid in that situation, because I remember every now and then, and I still to this day, I'll see a trailer going up the road, and I'll recognize it being a monster truck, you know, team or even a NASCAR team. I say, oh man, look at that. You know, that's so-and-so going up and down the road. I think the last truck I saw on the road, I think I saw a Bigfoot hauler and I saw a Virginia Giant within a couple weeks of each other a couple summers ago. And it's always exciting to see a truck on the road, and, you know, but to see it out on an open trailer like that's got to be even more exciting. You're seeing the truck itself.
Yeah, you're not only seeing the truck yourself, but you're seeing the TNT National Points Leader right here, getting ready to go into our finals against the USA-1 Chevrolet. Chevy versus Chevy final round here. And the greatest thing about this, Matt, is there is no Monster Smash final graphic, no build-up music. We can celebrate good times for that, can't we?
My sadness is immeasurable.
Scott and Star Army are going to set up the stage here for this all Chevrolet final. Porter is, of course, going to be in the near lane, which is the left lane, USA-1, and the far lane, Matt. We've got a battle here of the most consistent Chevrolet versus the Chevrolet that's considered the #1 Chevrolet in the country.
Yeah, it's going to be a good final, and Rod Litzau still having lane choice. He's been working that right side of the truck all night long. We see the truck stage in together here, and they come off the line together. But the difference here again is that short run to the first set of cars, USA-1 gets a little bit more speed and completely clears that first set of cars, and Crusher tags the last car again and gets to bouncing. This is the difference. USA-1 moves forward through no man's land with a nice smooth run, sails it over the second set, and what is it, a half truck length victory?
Yeah, about a half a truck length right there. The acceleration to USA-1. As soon as it gets all 4 tires on the ground, like I said, at this point on the circuit, there may have been only 1 or 2 trucks that could have kept up with him at that point, and Carolina Crusher, unfortunately, was not one of them. Porter does not quite have the horsepower as that white truck in the right lane, and USA-1 makes history 4 in a row on the TNT circuit without a hood on the front of the truck. Rod Litzau is happy.
It's time for the Monster Mash, the finals of the TNT Monster Truck Challenge, the championship side-by-side elimination between the defending national champion, USA-1 and Rod Litzau out of Spring Lake Park, Minnesota, and the current national point leader, Gary Porter, the Carolina Crusher from Weedsport, North Carolina.
Well, all the Chevrolet people, they've got to be tickled to death right now. We're going to have an all-Chevrolet final. Carolina going against Minnesota. Both of them run basically the same kind of trucks. The engine's located in basically the same position. The big difference right now, one of them's your national points leader, and the other one's trying to catch him. Let's see what's going to... It's going to be a war. USA-1 goes to the right lane. Carolina Crusher's working on the left side. They set pace down the line. They're all shot.
Let's see if Carolina Crusher can pull the momentum. Litzau got the early shot. He's done it again. Making 4 in a row for Rod Litzau and USA-1.
God, that's the first time ever anybody has ever won 4 events in a row. A tremendous accomplishment, not just for the wins, but for the way they had to do it. They had to fight and claw to get anywhere near the top.
Oh, I was very happy. You're doing something nobody's done before here on the tour, and the work's not done yet. They've got a lot of races yet to go, and boy, I'm not exactly sure what show they went to next. I'm not sure if they had a day off after this or not, but they're in the middle of a big, big, big tour, and the better you can keep your truck in shape, they're not going to have a chance to really go back to the shop and get this truck fully fixed. Rod's got to be happy, not just for the win, but the fact he did no more damage to the USA-1.
Exactly. If you can win in a truck you rolled over 2 days prior and set history and make history at the same time, of course you're going to be ecstatic and happy about it here. This is a little bit of a thing at the end of the show that just kind of made me scratch my head a little bit. We see the updated points. We see that USA-1 is making up some points as they talk that up at the very end of the show, but he's still 95 points back from Carolina Crusher, who now at the end of the show only has a 3-point lead over Equalizer, but at the beginning of the show it was 36 points. What in the heck happened?
Yeah, not sure there. They don't really get into it much, but there are other events going on. I guess they take that into account. I know they ran a lot of shows down south through this summer stretch as well, where we see the Taurus trucks 2 and 3 both running together at TNT races with Gravedigger #1 and Les Anderson. Unfortunately, we lost Les here the week that we're recording this, so we want to wish our best wishes to the Anderson family. We're thinking about you, and we certainly want to appreciate the stuff that Les did for the Gravedigger brand, because as Dennis is out here trying to, run on the TNT main tour for the points races, Les is out there representing the name well in the first Gravedigger truck at some of these other ancillary races.
Exactly, Matt. And we do want to say, as you said, rest in peace to Les. And we are hoping and praying that the Anderson family can get through this as quick as possible. Anytime you lose somebody, it is incredibly hard. And Ryan and Adam and anybody else that's listening to this, thank you guys for listening. And we hope your family's doing well. As we move on, though, to cover this this points debacle at the end of this, though, Matt, I don't know where they pick up here, because at the beginning of the show, USA-1 is 79 points back. At the end of the show, we're talking about how he's gaining ground, yet he loses ground because now he's 95 points back. And then all of a sudden, Equalizer jumps up to within 3 points of Gary Porter. They could have done some explaining here at the end of this show, even if it's just a quick little snap of the fingers to say, hey, Equalizer won such and such brackets over here, and now it's gaining ground on Carolina Crusher. They could have done something here, because the average viewer that's watching this at the end of the show is just going to be scratching their head.
Doesn't make a lot of sense. And granted, I guess most people probably weren't watching it with a critical eye like we are here. What is it, 32 years later?
Yeah.
But
they didn't know 32 years later somebody was going to gripe at them.
You just kind of take it at face value at that point, I guess, and trust them. Maybe they took a little creative license. Who knows?
So we've got Carolina Crusher now sitting 445. Equalizer #2, 442. USA-1 is at 350. Gravedigger 271. Awesome Kong 226. Nightlife 211. Mad Dog 187. No Problem 173. Stomper 167. And Wild Hair jumping into the top 10 at 163. Man, I got to tell you, that's some tight racing still back there from about 7th to 10th within 20 points of each other, really.
Yeah, and I think Stomper and Wild Hair are moving around the order as well. I think Wild Hair was ahead of Stomper at the beginning of the show, but neither truck ran. I think Wildhair might have been on this New York tour and just didn't run this night because obviously Bob Breen's there driving Outlaw, and they're running it with the Mad Dog truck. But yeah, there's some explanation to be had here between these points, because Wildhair comes into the event 7th
and ends 10th.
And ends 10th. There was a 40-point difference between Wildhair and Stomper. And let's see here. At the end of the race, I got to get back to my frame here. We're looking, how many points difference? Wait for the screen to update. Come on, Tough Tracks. Couple more seconds. We're trying to be entertaining, and we're burning a lot of time. Here we go. Stomper's now 4 points ahead of Wildhair, so something's happening with the way they calculated. Maybe they put him up for the wrong race. I don't even know, but they definitely is something afoot in terms of
something a Bigfoot is going on right here. The points at the end of the show make absolutely no sense. However, the racing that we saw here was pretty good, I must say. Other than a few issues with some ramps out there, that was really the only issues that I had with the entire show, was the fact that those ramps, they didn't really go in and try and work on them. I do think that at one point they did try to even up the launch side on the left in that first lane, but after that it kind of goes away, and I think that's what ends up biting Carolina Crusher in the final.
I'll tell you, the racing really is good here. What the only race we really have discussed that was kind of a blowout was that first round race with Nightlife and what was it, Awesome Kong?
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything else is pretty much truck length or two difference, other than maybe the one race where Awesome Kong got out of shape as well. But we're talking some really good racing here, and hard racing, especially given the circumstances that these guys have to race, if not tomorrow, at least 2 days from now after some travel across the state. So, man, the TV production, Tough Tracks again is still a little early. There's a few small errors that they kind of catch as they're doing the voiceovers, which at least is good. And so I'm not really going to knock that too hard, because Scott does pick up on a couple mistakes and correct it live as they're recording. So the points are a confusing thing, but the racing overall is very, very good. We got to see Bigfoot versus Gravedigger. That always bumps it up a point on the MCS scale of monster truck racing.
Not only that, we got to see USA-1 and Bigfoot as well.
We did. Technically, we got Bigfoot and Digger twice, but I'm going to call it 1.5 times since Digger was kind of broken. So my overall score for this event in the Tough Tracks format, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10.
You and I gave the same score. 8 out of 10 is a perfect description for this. Honestly, I bumped it up from a 7 for one reason, and that was, of course, Bennett Clark's chicken that he had in the side of the cab. You could not have the super chicken. Yes, you cannot. Not the Thunder Chicken, not to be confused with Thunder Chicken. This is actually the Super Chicken. Yes. This is part of the Chicken Avengers.
Hey, whatever brings you good luck. I mean, Bennett's going on to the next round with no damage, so it's got to be doing something for him. He says he brings some good luck.
Exactly. Hey, you can never go wrong with a lucky chicken. We'll put it that way. And that is the one thing and one phrase you can take from this week's episode of the Retro Monster Truck Review. With that, though, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you all again on the tracks across America.
Oh, wait a second, my friend. We're not done with the show yet. We've got some other things to take care of. Again, we got to make sure that we give any commercials that we've got. Check out. I want to give a shout out to the Scott Douglas podcast myself, because they're in their season number 2 right now. Give them a listen. The day we're recording this, I think there's a big Bigfoot roundtable versus snakebite discussion. I'm interested to try that. So if you have a Twitch subscription to them, go check them out. Check out all the Monster Truck podcasts. We like to spread the love around here on the Retro Monster Truck Review. So do you have anybody else you want to plug?
Hey, we could plug Crush This with our buddy Dan Agash over there with Brad Shaw. You're talking Scott Douglas. That's their next guest as of this recording for the Crush This podcast. Always keep a watch out every Tuesday night for Crush This, as well as anytime they've done this Power Hour here recently as well. And it wasn't Brad and Cheech that was doing the show. It was Frank Krimmel, Scott Liddycoat on there talking back and forth with each other. And I forget the third guy that was on there. I want to say it was BJ Johnson, but I could be wrong off the top of my head. It was a very good episode to listen to. Actually, you know what? It was BJ. It was a good episode to listen to. I just listened to it the other day. So check out Crush This. Dan and Brad are doing a great job over there with that podcast as well. Also, All Monster Podcast. Always check out the All Monster Videos YouTube page to see if that's been updated. Our buddy Robbie Haught, who was on here a couple weeks ago with the Minneapolis 2003 episode, as well as the TNT Rivalry episode. He's been on that as well. Always a soft-spoken guy. Him and Dustin Hart do a great job.
They really do. So you're saying that BJ Johnson is the man of the hour on the Hour of Power, too sweet to be sour.
Funky like a monkey.
I don't know. Frank Krimmel might fight him for that.
He's just like superstar Billy Graham. He's got a similar physique. But make sure you tune in next week here on the Retro Monster Truck Review. We're going to be covering Monster Trucks 2000, the new Thrillenium. It's the Tacoma Narrows Bridge disaster of monster truck events.
You've got a point right there. Tell you what, that's going to be a good one to listen to as I let you all go for the second time here. We'll see y'all again on those long tracks across America.
We got to come up with a new tagline that's not Dick Leak related.
It's a good tagline, though.
Wow, Tough Tracks. We'll see you again on Tough Tracks.
Good night, everybody.